Ben is in Indianapolis. Hi, Ben. Welcome to the Dave Ramsey Show.
Hey, thanks, Dave. I was calling to get some tithing guidance from you.
Okay.
I was raised in a Christian tithing-paying home and working my way back to that.
Mm-hmm.
My wife was not.
Mm-hmm.
She had a good job. She made over $100,000, and she's quit, stay at home to raise her 2-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
I have a good income. I've been blessed. I fluctuate between about 175 to 200.
Mm-hmm.
And trying to bring up the subject of potentially paying, she sees it as an extra $17,000 to $20,000 a year tax. Trying to get out of that mindset. Just wanted to see what kind of guidance.
So I assume she's not a Christian.
She is. I mean, she's coming around to it. She's coming around to.
Coming around to what? Faith?
Yeah.
Okay.
She, in the last 5 years, we're in our mid-30s.
Mm-hmm.
She didn't have any religion until we met, and then I've slowly been myself coming back to it and feel strong about it. She supports me in that.
Are you attending a church?
Yes. Yeah, I am. She comes with me on occasion.
Okay. All right. This is not a financial discussion. This is a spiritual discussion. Okay?
Sure.
Because what she is saying is perfectly logical from her perspective. Because her perspective is not one where God is the Lord of her life at this stage. And that's not calling her names or calling her out in any way. But if someone is not a person of faith, to ask them to tithe, it is a tax. It does feel like that. And
right.
So this has to do with the level of faith that she has and the maturity of that faith. In other words, God is not in charge of her life right now.
Right. It says we're back at giving milk versus meat type deal.
Well, we're back to asking someone who's not a Christian to tithe. I think she's approaching her faith. She's beginning to feel it out. She's wondering about it, but she has not embraced it completely yet. And when she does that, then tithing will come from a different discussion, because a tithe for you and I, we understand God owns it all, and he's asking us to give a tenth of what he already owns. And
right.
He's in charge of our life, you and me. But if he's not in charge of somebody's life, then it's weird to them to tithe. Does that make sense?
Well, it does.
And so I would not argue with her about tithing. I might come to some compromise and just say, as a part of my faith, this is very important to me, and so I want to do at least this level. Because tithing, as you know, is not a salvation issue.
Sure.
It doesn't get you saved, and it doesn't make God like you more. It's just his instruction to us as believers to be givers. And the tithe is the baseline, the plumb line for that. It's the starting point. But God's not mad at her over this, or you, if you don't give a full tithe. And so I would be a lot more concerned with, attending a church where faith is attractive for her, and her to be there in a situation where she can meet God in a really deep way. And then the tithe will become the result, the byproduct of that. I've not met anybody I've never met a lady whose husband said, we're going to start tithing because I demand it, and they say, oh, okay, I love God now. That doesn't work.
That won't work. That won't work at all. And
No.
Had a good income, and now she's not.
Yeah.
She's raising her child.
And this lady, your wife's a bright lady. I mean, she made big money, and so she's going to intellectually approach her faith as well. And she's going to want to argue through some of the tough questions regarding faith. And it's going to be a great journey for you all as she approaches it. But I would put the tithe on the back burner as a discussion instead of it being a barrier to her sticking her toe in the water about faith. I would remove that barrier.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, because you're right. There doesn't need to be any barriers between her and God at this point.
Yeah.
And if that's the wall, well, I like the sliding scale approach as well.
Yeah, and that's okay.
I can come in at.
Because, again, I think the goal is 5 years from now, she has a deep and abiding, thriving faith that is intellectually and spiritually based, that would be appealing to someone like her, that comes to in a proper way. And then the net result of that is the two of you walking together naturally decide to tithe.
No, that's exactly it.
So
Our
that's
kids will be
how I would
7.
go at it. I would go at it from the bottom up, so to speak, instead of the top down. And but it's a good discussion. You know, the tithe is a lot of times a spiritual discussion. It was with me, because I didn't grow up in church, and so when the preacher said he wanted 1/10 of my income, I went, right, you got to be kidding me. That was my first reaction. It's kind of like your wife, really. And so, but then when I actually accepted the Lord and said, okay, you're in charge now, and then I said, okay, what's the handbook say? Oh, that's what it says. Okay, we do what the handbook says. And it was a natural reaction for me, even as rebellious and tough and grouchy as I am sometimes. So anyway, but that's how I approached it too. It was tied into my faith. This is the Dave Ramsey Show.